if you have something that might be something that could be triggering under your screen, you might put some warnings and you might put some reminders to keep everyone comfortable with it. Also making sure that you guys keep the equity as it is the way it has been mentioned a lot, legacy APs as well. Also, as per usual, POI is very important within this competition. Since the very beginning, we also encourage you guys to engage through POIs for the sake of the engagement as well. And yeah. So without further ado, under the motion, this House prefers a world in which moral violence is compulsory for prisoners. We welcome the first speaker of the proposition. That is yours.
Okay, for POI preference, you can just directly ask me, do not spam, and congratulations on making it this far for everyone. And I would like to begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Criminals that commit heavy level of crimes like rape, murder, arsoning is someone who is abominable mentally and simply insane. Since we know that killing them is practically immoral and denied because majority of countries support human rights, our side of the house will choose biomedical intervention as our best alternative. Proud to stand inside proposition. As a clarification, as proposition we have a fiat to assume that biointervention enhancement already exists, or else this debate will not be occurring in the first place, right? Now, moving on, I would like to give a burden to the opposition side of the House to prove that to what extent that the alternative that our current status quo already have will work eventually. 2 models that we would like to define under side proposition. Firstly, how and what type of biomedical interventions that we're going to talk about, and how will it look like the system and the thematical, something like that. In side proposition, this biomedical interventions will take form in chemical injections like vaccines that is advanced and give out permanent results even after only one time of injection. So, and I will prove furthermore on my setup on why is it justified, and it has went through a lot of check and balance. So this type of prisoners will not just be like a lab rat or something like that. And of course, other than vaccines, if there's like a very very rare condition where it's actually like a genetical illness or something like that is very very heavy, we also provide surgery in term of the biomedical intervention as alternative to stop this to enhance the prisoner's moral behavior or moral decision making capacities in individual. Now moving on to the second definition that let's run an analysis on characterization of prisoners. Today, we would like to declare on side proposition that it will only occur for first-degree crime. For example, like murder, mass arsoning, mass bombing, practically just that type of crime that is heavy, like rape or something like that. Like petty crimes like petty theft or shoplifting will not be included, because we can see that they are still some little bit mentally better, because maybe they do like thefting or thieving because they are pushed from other sectors such as economic factors, right? But when someone commit murder, mass arson, or mass bombing, like killing innocent, it simply means that they are not rational anymore. They are currently having and struggling with a lot of serious mental issue that we actually need to take care of. Because their mental health is that bad and problematic, it is very necessary. Like a normal, logical, sane human being wouldn't do that, right? Criminals are these insane people that struggle with mental health issues, genetical issues, and more of external problem like maybe abusive family, toxic environment, etc. 2 points of setup then. Firstly, why bioenhancement is already in status quo and it works and doesn't have any side effect. Do notice that this type of biomedical enhancement that has been used as a bio interventions is already tested by scientists. Like who do you think will run an analysis on that? Like, who do you think will create that? Of course, that's like scientists who is advanced with a lot of check and balance that this prisoner wouldn't be a lab rat. Or else, what happened if in the worst case they become a lab rat? We don't need to worry because that will not occur, as government is scrutiny to the point that if they are that bad, they will get cancelled and called out by journalists from worldwide. They will get like a bad reputation. And you notice that in the majority of country, for example like Indonesia or many other country like that, they have this ideology where they always support human rights, right? So even in that type of crime, for example, the event that occurs with Ferdi Sambo or something like that, even when they commit serious crimes, they will not still get killed or get executed. And yeah, they will get bad reputation, and many countries will actually stop having multilateral connection with that particular country because they're violating human rights, especially in big union like World Union. Yeah.
isn't the criminal is already taking away the rights of the victim itself? Why then they should not receive any taken rights away?
Okay, I will explain why our criminal justice system is not enough in my second setup, but thank you so much for that. Moving on then. Okay, eventually when they just kill or something like that, they violate human right that is sadly glorified from all over the world, like, right? So they will eventually stop having multilateral connection with that particular country because they're violating human right, especially in big union like World Union, where they glorify human rights. Of course, when there's a country that violates human right, they will get social sanction. And secondly, I will explain why our criminal justice system is not enough and to the extent that it is very bad because they will actually defend someone who kills someone and take someone's entire human right. But our status quo, our world just don't want to kill because they said if you kill that person, then what makes you different? That is a sad truth that we need to accept because the sad truth is like that. When you kill someone, when you take someone's human right, the sad truth is that country will still defend them by saying, okay, it's okay, we will not kill them, but we will give them like a lifetime of prison, for example, like 10 years, 20 years, 40 years. But to the sad point that actually our criminal justice system is that corrupt, especially when this type of prisoners came from like a wealthy family or have like certain degree or major. When the first court said that, oh, you will be punished for your entire life, and then they offer another court, and then okay, your time will be reduced to 40 and 30 years. And this is exactly why the criminal justice system, no thank you, because this is exactly why the criminal justice system is that corrupt. So we eventually will need other alternative that actually supports human rights and give out the best alternative that is permanent, because the majority of this world is being to glorifying on human rights. Even when they kill someone and they took someone's entire human right, even so they will still not get beheaded or like executed after like 10 years of prison. If this particular person is still sick mentally, then they will still commit more crimes. So this is why we fix the fundamental from the very bottom itself, which is the personality of that person too. Substantive, two layers of substantive. Why is it the best alternative to prevent them from being a criminal again? Two layers to this. Firstly, let's say about the character development enhancement that will eventually make them become more human. Let's insert time framing and step-by-step analysis. So what does it mean to when someone receives this biomedical intervention? Like what will this look like? Of course, when they get injected or like surgery if needed, they will have the ability to enhance their personality trait such as empathy, like altruism, honesty, and fairness. And this is why it's better beneficial. And this is exactly why it's more beneficial, because we fix the fundamental from the person itself. So even after they get released out of prison, even when they're like maybe running around somewhere free, their mental condition will be at to the point that they will not commit any more crime because they are already become a better human from the inside. And we have provided on why it's very likely that this biomedical enhancement can actually work. Second pillar then, why our current status quo is more enough, more extension to this. Do notice that there are four pillars to our criminal justice system. First is deterrence, second is protection for society, third is punishment, and fourth is rehabilitation. Firstly, let's talk about deterrence then. Deterrence is what's stopping them from being more crimes. And this is exactly why under side proposition we can actually achieve all those four pillars. For example, in deterrence, it can be fulfilled because we can read, as we already know here, that when we insert this biomedical interventions to them, they will become someone who is morally better, and they will actually become more human. Like even when they are this level of insane, with this type of biomedical interventions, they can actually become better human and can be healed. So even after they are done serving their time in prison, they will eventually become a better human. And even if they get like lifetime prison, it is still okay because after all, they will eventually become a better person. I mean, it's better than being insane in your entire life, right? Moreover, to rehabilitation. Rehabilitation is not enough if like they do it as like a mandatory. Like what? If they're still messed up after prison, they will still commit crimes, and that is why underside proposition proud to propose.
Thank you very much for that kind remarks. For proposition, now to open up the case of opposition, I welcome first speaker, Tony Spears.
I'm starting my speech, just a heads up that the speech will contain some sensitive content. I will talk about like people who become victims of cases and etc. And for my pronouns, they're going to be she. there any timer?
No.
What? Oh, never mind. Three. Starting my speech in 3, 2. Seeing the person who endangered you or harmed you in domestic violence but now are instantly able to be seen as a good person in the society, or how they do not go through the process of guilt, for example, remorse because now you instantly just make them feel like empathy, or like are able to have a better moral standard at the end of the day. We say that the biggest failure from team proposition is that they never gave any justification to you. Why is it okay like to prioritize these feelings of these perpetrators, for example, rather than the victims where their rights have already been violated, for example. But now you only cater towards like how this perpetrator can be a better person, without like how the process of guilt and remorse towards the victim is the most important thing. We say that their cases cannot fly if they do not explain this, right? But then 2 points of rebuttals before moving on to our cases here. First of all, where they say that CGS system is corrupt, you cannot give a maximum punishment towards these people, and etc. 3 responses towards this. First of all, panels, we say that this is so worst case in, right? We do not understand why how this is like implementable in all cases, because we say that even rapists, they still get like a higher amount of punishment, because realize, panels, that law is objective. This is something that is like already in the system, and then it that has to be implemented because there is like a certain standard to it. We say it is worst case. But then second of all, we say that okay, even if in the worst cases CGS system is corrupt, for example, and etc., we say that it's only worse on your side, because realize how this is only just going to be a way for government to get away from fixing the system at the very first place, because you just shift the problem to like fix the victims in terms of an instant solution with biochemical, where you don't even like give the feeling where they have to go through the environment of prison that is violent, for example, where gives you that instills you the fear, for example, to not repeat it in further actions. We'll prove to you why then in our arguments why it is the most important thing, and how this is only a harmful solution then, pals, right? But then second rebuttal on terms of deterrence. 2 responses here. First of all, pals, we do not understand why it is the most exclusive thing for them to be able to now become a better person and have a deterrence, and etc. There is no process analysis to what extent like this deterrence mean, for example, and how is it going to be implemented in society. They never implemented like how enhancing these certain these moral behavior is able to be implemented when they come back to the society, and etc. We say that we say that this is lack of analysis. But then second of all, we say that even if there is deterrence on your side, we say that it is bad, panels, because realize how deterrence is not supposed to come from you from you now being instantly fixed, where you now instantly have are able to regret your actions because now you have a higher level of empathy. But we say that deterrence is when you go through the process of having the same punishment that is equal towards the trauma that you caused to the victim, panels. This is why jail is taking a longer time, because they want your rights to be stripped away, because you already harmed a certain victim, for example, and give irreversible trauma, and etc. We say that it is unjust. There are 2 points of framing here. First of all, how does biochemical enhancement look like, right? We say now it is mandatory for prisoners, where it enhances your self of empathy or consideration in the future to not do this again, and etc. This looks like 2 things. Where it either happens in the prison, they get this enhancement. Well, now prison will be a different environment for status quo, right? Where there's less intimidation or violence between prisons, because now people have the consideration not to do this. They're more selfless, and etc. Or also like the police are most likely not going to be violent or harsh, and etc. because they want to promote like these certain the good moral behaviors based on the standard that doesn't harm other people, and etc. We'll prove to you why is this not aligned with the principle of CGS, right? But then also when they're out of prison, it is more easier for them to be accepted or normalized as a society, because now there is a objective measure that they are a good person. Now we'll prove to you why is this bad. Then second of all, on our side, what do we want? We want to stick to the status quo, where incarceration is purely retribution to criminals, right? Like how to give a proportional punishment that reflects the degree of harm that they give towards these victims, right? We trade off that we're not going to prevent prisoners from future cases in terms of like bio enhancement panels, right? Or like internal, but we prove to you why then like the criminals are suffering the most harsher punishment, for example, is the most important thing towards retribution and victims' closure. But then moving on to my first argument then, why wouldn't CGS retribution towards towards the certain without this biochemical is the most urgent thing, panels, right? Now let's see how the world will look like on their side. We say that there is 2 things. A, you focus on the reparation from these certain criminals, right? You lessen the process of guilt and remorse, because now that you instantly, for example, inject these certain biochemicals, where now they just instantly they instantly have like a higher level of empathy to not do it again, for example, or like even if they do have like a guilt about their action that they did in the past, it is not going to be a long process that is going to be violent, or how it is going to be a process that is also taking away your rights in prison for a longer time, or how like the environment is more violent, and etc. But then B, we say that it also creates a different environment in the prison at the end of the day, right? We say that now prisons won't be full of people who are also going to gang up on each other, be violent, for example, or how like people are doing violence towards like these other people who do a higher degree of harm, for example, or the police that are going to be more strict and violent towards you, parents, right? Why then, with this current situation, it is harmful and does not fulfill the principle of CGS. Panels realize that the most important thing is these criminals are able to receive the certain punishment that is within the same equal or degree of harm that they cause towards the victims, right? Let's take cases of, for example, like people who do sexual harassment, right? We say that this causes irreversible trauma for these people, where it is so hard for you to continue your life, for example, right? Therefore, we say that these criminals should be able to feel the same degree of harm and not instantly just be reparated, Harold, but they need to go through the sufferings of not be able to communicate with your family in the prison, or you beaten up by other people in the prison because people are still going to be violent, and etc. Therefore, we say because of this, retribution is better on our side, because we even in the worst case, when the prison is violent, people are ganging up on you, and police are being strict, we let them reflect on their action. We say that this is what instills the fear to not do this action again, panels, because you give a view of like how this prison is so threatening, or in the future how you are not less likely to be accepted by the society. We say that it is enough. You do not need these biochemicals that only caters towards the perpetrator, and etc. Right? Therefore, then moving on to my second argument, why victims in the victim perception and in society it only creates a harmful situation. Firstly, then upon the victims, right? We say that what the victims want is like a form of closure, right? They want like the consequences of the actions that are done by the preparation is based on the degree of harm that is being caused, for example, right? We say that they want we say that even in the end they want this certain perpetrator to change in the future, to have like a better society protection, but we say that they still want like a form of guilt in doing your certain harm to you, and etc. Therefore, then we say like in the worst cases, even if that empathy can feel guilty or it triggers your genuine remorse, we say that it is that these victims still are not going to perceive these certain criminals as people who feel the certain trauma or remorse that has been caused to them, right? We say this is also perpetrated by the society that doesn't give the societal punishment anyways. Now these criminals are able to go back to the society and live a happy life, for example, because they are now seen as a good person, for example, that just like discredits the harm or like the action that they have done in the first place, right? But then second layer, upon the society protection, we say that society protection is now better anyways, because we say when fear is instilled towards these criminals, where now people are going to realize how this is like in the certain society, there is still going to be like a harsher punishment when you face in these certain prison system, for example, where now you're not just going to be treated with like biochemicals and you're going to be treated like you're not a prisoner. We say that this is what gives the society protections for like further criminals to not do this action anymore. Therefore, we're so proud to oppose.
Thank you very much for that fine speech. First speaker of opposition, and then the case of proposition. I welcome second speaker. Thank you.
Alright, before I start my speech, just a few trigger warnings. I'll be talking about things such as mental illness, incarceration, murder, and like psychopaths. And also, don't take things out of context since this is being recorded live, right? Now then, I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. No one chooses to be born differently, to be born as a criminal. But we all want to fit into society and we all want to be normal. On side proposition, we offer a solution to those who are unfortunate enough to be born with genetic indispositions due to the lottery of birth. Now then, onto my rebuttals. Firstly, they said that these criminals won't feel guilt or remorse under our side of the house when we give them when we propose this solution, right? Several responses to this. Firstly, it is actually under their side in the status quo that criminals don't feel guilt. This is because when you're dealing with criminals such as, for example, sociopaths or psychopaths, they lack the ability to actually feel, right? So you, on their side, you just put them in prison, they spend their time there, but at the end of the day, they won't feel guilt. And this is literally why, the reason why someone who have done crime in the past are actually more likely to become second-time offenders in the future. Because the criminal justice system under their side doesn't work, right? Jail doesn't work. So there's no deterrence on side opposition. Furthermore, note that under our side of the house, yeah, it's okay, yeah.
Please explain what you mean by CGS doesn't work. Is it like the process or like the punishment isn't proportional? Is it even never clear on your side?
Yeah, I'll actually respond this on my second rebuttal. I'll flag you when I get there. Now, furthermore then, note under our side of the house, these prisoners will still have to carry out their full prison sentence, right? The difference is that when we give them these injections, we give them the ability to feel things such as empathy. So they can actually reflect on their actions, right? For example, if someone has done murder and we give them the ability to empathize with other people, they'll feel like, oh, I just took the life someone else's, right? Like they have relatives that will mourn over this. I've done something terrible. And this is why we would achieve better deterrence under our side, because we actually allow these criminals to actually feel things such as empathy, right? Now then, onto my second rebuttal that, oh, the jail system actually works in the status quo, right? First of all, there's several reasonings as to why this is just clearly untrue. First of all, in the current status quo, when you go to jail, you are treated as a criminal, right? You're treated as someone that is likely to do more crime. You're just treated as this person that, oh, you're labeled as someone that have been done by crime. This is like your entire identity, right? Even in prisons, prisoners are called by their numbers, right? They aren't even given names. You dehumanize these people. And this is why this would lead to things such as a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Because under their side of the house, when you are a criminal and you go to jail, you're going to be dehumanized. You're told that you are just a criminal. This is your entire identity. And so even when they are released, I'll take that later, even when they are released from this jail system, they're more likely to do this crime because they believe that this is their identity, right? Second reason as to why the jail system doesn't work, because there is no education in this jail system, right? Jails don't get enough funding. This is just a true statement, right? Like, for example, they don't give enough books for these prisoners to read, right? And thirdly, because of overcrowding. This is like a huge problem in the status quo, where there are more and more criminals every day, and jails are not being expanded at the same extent of level to hold all of these criminals, right? So on side opposition, they're letting criminals be getting released early because on their side, and it is simply because they need to make room for other more severe criminals, right? On their side, it is more likely that criminals would actually escape punishment because on their side, they need to make room for these more severe criminals, so they will cut down their prison sentences, right? Imagine being a victim under their side of the house. Let's say you are a relative of someone that got murdered, and you found out that this murderer got released early, not because of their good actions, not because they feel guilt, not because they actually show remorse, but because the system, the jail system is overcrowded and they need to make room for another criminal, right? This won't happen under our side of the house because we actually deter them to do this, and I'll explain this also further on my extension. Before moving on, can I take that POI?
Isn't like them dehumanizing the victim should give them a proportional punishment, meaning like quote unquote dehumanizing them to incarceration?
Look, we have already told you, firstly, we will still punish these individuals because they have to serve out their prison sentences, and this won't happen under your side because of overcrowding. And even if under our side we don't actually punishment, we still think it is better because we actually deter them to do future crimes, and we're protecting the innocent civilians from these crimes that is gonna happen, right? Now then, onto my extension as to why this is actually right on principle. Panel, when we are talking about these criminals here, the reason that they become criminals in the first place is because of genetic factors such as mental illness, right? It is not a choice. There have already some illness that actually makes them more likely to do these things, right? Note that the prisoners, I'll no longer take POIs. Note that the prisoners we're talking about are those that have committed severe first-degree crimes, such as, for example, arson, mass bombing, murder, kidnapping, and etc. On our side of the house, we have already told you, we're not just going to force those people who commit petty crimes, right? These criminals who commit first-degree crimes like murder are those that have some sort of genetic illness or hormone imbalance. For example, psychopaths cannot feel empathy because the chemicals that are responsible for triggering this feeling aren't being produced by like their glands or other body parts, right? So for example, if I was born with this genetic disposition, then I would be labeled as a sociopath or like a psychopath by society. But I did not choose to be born this way. way. Like, I did not choose to actually become a psychopath, but rather this role was imposed to me due to the lottery of birth. And as someone who has been born with this genetic illness, as a child, I would never feel joy from like interacting with other kids. As a teenager, I don't feel the value of friendships, family, or romance. And when I grow up, simply because I felt numb all of my life, I will turn to other non-conventional methods, such as, for example, torture, just to feel something, right? Just to make this feeling of numbness go away, just to feel a sense of joy, right? Panel, no one chooses to be born this way. Our side solves this, right? On our side of the house, when we provide bio enhancement, we provide hope to these criminals. We give them the opportunity to feel empathy, the opportunity to feel selflessness and honesty. We give them the thing that they have been chasing for, the thing that they've been searching for the entire lives, the ability to feel joy through things such as human interactions. This means that under our side of the house, we deter them away from doing future crimes because we already take away the incentive to do these crimes, right? Criminals under our side of the house don't have to do things such as, for example, kidnapping, torture, or murder just to get this feeling of numbness to go away, right? And lastly then, on the four principles, let me explain to you as to why our side actually fulfills the four pillars of the criminal justice system. Firstly, on rehabilitation. This is so that criminals can serve as actual functional members of society. We think that they are able to do this under our side because they are less likely to commit future crimes because they already feel like, oh, I'm a normal person now, right? I'm no longer labeled by my genetic disposition. I'm already like fixed because of these bio enhancements. Secondly, deterrence. We already take away their incentive to do future crimes because they already have the ability to actually feel things such as, for example, empathy. And thirdly, on protection for society, we actually do better protection because we prevent future crimes. And when we prevent future crimes, this also solves the problem of things such as, for example, prison overcrowding, which means that criminals won't actually be released early just because of this reason. And thirdly, on punishment, this is still fulfilled under our side of the house because they still have to carry out their full prison sentences. And furthermore, we think that criminals are going to feel more punished under our side of the house simply because they get the ability to feel guilt, right? Guilt is something that is really strong, and it actually only exists under our side of the house because we allow these criminals to do these things when we give them bio enhancements. Because of all of these reasons, then vote for side proposition.
Thank you very much for the fun remarks. Second speaker of proposition, after the hear the case of proposition, I welcome second speaker, it is yours.
Right, trigger warning. My speech is going to be sensitive because I'm going to talk about victims' feeling and how this is probably the interest of my case. Starting with 3, 2, 1. From the first of the debate, they never even create a word that is very crystallized to begin with. Like A, they never explain when will it be enhanced morally and how like the society treats them later when they go back to society, or like how does the behavior of the criminal itself, and like how does the victim feel seeing the criminal that already like ruins them, takes their rights away, now like living happily and treated very good in the society at the end of the day. The only thing that they keep repeating on their case is just only that this is for criminals that is mentally like needed or like mentally challenged, which is to begin with two responses towards this then. A, they have a very less urgency at the end of the day, panels. Like they're only talking about a micro scale that is very case per case for people that is mentally in need and it is not within their choice to do like crimes. Like we should be talking about like all criminals, and you want to make the world a like more inclusive towards the punishment that should be given towards them. Meaning on like scale, we're going to give it towards all victims and all prisoners, and the scale like urgency of us is bigger and their side is very like case per
safer case and less urgency. But like secondly, all right, even if yes, we're going to debate on like the clash of the micro scale of these people that is really in need of like mental health and etc. We say it is already existing status quo and is very enough. There is the existence of like rehabilitation, where here you are treated like you're like a very like you are also the victim, like where you're treated like why is it wrong? You are given like psychologists, psychiatrists, and like medicine and etc. Meaning, if you want to like also cater for the mental health in need person, it is already existing status quo. It is already enough at the end of the day. Their case is less urgent and never be needed at the end of the day. 2 points of clash here in the first speaker exchange. First, regarding like the CGS principle in line with the principle of CGS. Government comes and say that this is how we give them back their rights to, and also like still keep them in prison to give them deterrence. And well, the deterrence will come through the empathy. Two responses towards this. One, we say no panels. By giving them a deterrence through like the empathy will never be enough to give them the proportional, because it only stops there. It only stops when you feel empathized and like you cry because what if you're down to your victim. But then it doesn't give anything towards this prisoner. There is no like proportional consequences or like consequential impact that they should be receiving from like the involvement or like the crime or like the harms that they've made towards the victim at the end of the day. And B, like from the victim itself, imagine seeing your perpetrator, or like your the murderer of your significant others now live happily and now live in the society and being treated well. It is very unjustified and won't feel any victim closure at the end of the day. But comparatively on our side, we say that they deserve to clearly and purely receive the retribution that they have done, because they to begin with fulfill the principle of actus reus and mens rea. Meaning like on the case that they say that these people isn't their choice to do crimes, we say it is their choice, panels. There is so many like rational process to do crime before you do it. Like you have mens rea where you have the intention to do it before, and like actus reus where you act towards it at the end of the day. Meaning rationality is very likely to come in this certain process, and we say that it is still within their intention and they still deserve the consequences at the end of the day. To weigh this debate is which one is more important to fulfill the principle of retribution. We say on our side, we give the proportional punishment that they deserve, and we give a more victim closures, and we towards the victim at the end of the day, we want this clash. But then secondly, regarding like the CGS corruption and etc. CGS second class regarding the CGS condition. They say that the CGS is very corrupt, like there are so many ways for you to manipulate laws and etc. Two responses towards this. A, we say no panels. Like to begin with, laws is very objective. It comes from the society norms. The proportional punishment will very likely to come and like for very likely to be fulfilled that is in line with the like CGS interest. Or like if they say that it is very easy to be manipulated, we say no panels. There are so many like court process between like lawyers and judges for them to like argue regarding the way why you defend one another, and this is very likely to objectivity to happen. Or even if not, okay, then there is still like media or like people or society that can also become like the second judges that can also decide this. Like e.g., even media or like social media now can also influence the result of sentence of a prisoner at the end of the day. This proves that there are so many alternatives to like face this CGS corrupt. Even if it happens in the very worst case, we still cater towards this case at the end of the day. But then also they say that it is that it can also create a better prison environment. We say no panels. Exactly, the prisoner to begin with needs like a direct reflection towards them by giving them towards the environment that is very like violent and like very traumatic to begin with, which is in line with how like the victim is now feeling traumatized their whole life because they have getting harassed, for example, or like they're losing their significant others. This should also be felt by the prisoner itself and like to be put in an environment to like create a more reflection towards what they have done at the end of the day. We say that the way this debate is which one is more ideal towards the CGS condition. We say on our side we achieve this because like there are so many alternatives to still counter mechanize the corrupt even if it happened, and like we still prove why then this environment deserved by the prisoners at the end of the day. Before moving on to my extension, is there any POI? Alright, moving on to my extension then, regarding the reparation towards the prisoner itself. Alright, let's play in that case then. Regarding that they want to repair prisoners who is within not their choice to like do crimes where they are the one who is in mental needs and they are really, like in their vulnerable time, they deserve a reparation and doesn't deserve like high retribution or like to be treated very evil from the society or like from the people itself. But I'm going to explain to you why the status quo has already provided this method and it is already enough and even better at the end of the day. Why? Because there existence of rehabilitation panels. What does this give towards the criminal? Two things. A, it provides you a moral lessons. Like e.g., when you're being put in the rehabilitation, you're also given like experts or like psychiatrists that are state funded and like being chosen to be like the best ones to give you like lessons regarding like anger control or like decision making or like there are certain actions to be done when you're going back to the society to like fix your image that you have ruined and to like fix the perception towards the society towards you. They're being taught like regarding that. And B, it also gives you a gradual remorse in rehabilitation panels. Why? Because on our side, when you like exist like psychiatrist or like psychology, it teaches you as a criminal to like know what is the moral standard that exists and why is it not in line with your actions. Meaning like if you are a little bit mentally insane, therefore you like have to do things to make yourself survive and etc. But then we like explain to you, even if you're in this kind of state, there is a moral standard that you can overcome and there are so many alternatives for you to prevent. So this is what is being taught in rehabilitation, a more specific way to make the criminals realize and aware structurally why is it wrong is their actions to begin with at the end of the day. Comparatively on your side, you only give them a sudden change, only empathy and feeling of sad, but then there is no like structural reason or like principally why is your action so wrong. And secondly, you like only put them in the prison where it is to begin with full of people that the same as you, like full of like high empathy and like full of full of forgiveness and etc. Meaning you only make a prisoner like a society at the end of the day and fully full of acceptance. Where will be the method for you to realize that your actions is wrong principally to begin with? The weighing is which one can make them gradually aware. We give them rehabilitation with a longer time and a structural fix at the end of the day for a better criminal change and the victim both for team opposition. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that kind remarks. Second speaker of opposition, not to continue and not put the case of proposition, I will consent third speaker, time zero.
Okay, I would like to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel, we live in a world where crimes have to be alleviated and punished through rehabilitative and retributive means, right? The usage of a moral bioenhancement will make the purpose of the CGS would be clearer. We aim to fix individual in which they've done the most heinous crimes that they can finally get clarity of their actions, right? The role of justice, the role of jail time in trying to create a deterrent and sanction effect will still be prevalent in the CGS within our world. The only difference is that we are also aiming to increase the rehabilitation role in the CGS, right? Now moving on to my rebuttals, a couple of rebuttals that I have actually noted, right? The first is okay. I would like to respond to a couple of rebuttals that comes from the second speaker of the government. Never mind. Okay. The first thing is that we do not debate the existence of prison punishment, right? This will serve as a complementary to prison punishment. The difference is only on the outcome, right? Within the proposition's world, prison will be actually complemented by biomedical intervention. So jail time will actually still happen. For example, within the case of sexual assault, for example, chemical castrations still will be, will be administered, yes.
Like, isn't it when it is full with people that's already more intense, it doesn't treat like a prison anymore, and what is the difference between the society and at the end of the day and yourself?
Yeah, okay, I'll touch on that later. So what we're actually trying to do here is to we can actually still serve them jail time and then actually complementing with biomedical intervention, right? The result is after serving in prison, they will become a better person, individual in the society, right? Now, whether on the opposition's world, in prison, what they're actually advocating for is that if their heart is still tainted and corrupt, they can actually still always commit more crime after serving in jail time, right? The second is I'm going to be touching on the guilt and remorse that still occurs, right? These injections will not take your memory away. This isn't a medical, this is a medical procedure to delete your past memory. However, you said something about guilt, right? Do notice that people who commit heavy crimes and are corrupted mentally, then they won't feel guilty. The third, okay, they also touched on about like, okay, oh, these criminals can actually be diagnosed by therapists, right? But a lot of the time that these criminals do not have access to therapists, right? It's still being posed as a luxury within our status quo today because therapist is seen as something as a luxury. So a lot of these people, a lot of these criminals with mentally ill traits, yes.
We say that if you talk about like overcrowding, prison is corrupt, but you still say that people are gonna serve prison, then why is this problem like fixed on your side if you still say that you still say people will serve prison?
Yeah, because the existence of a moral bio enhancement, right? Now, a couple of things that we have actually characterized is the fact that prisons are overcrowded and underfunded right now. Psychologists in jail are unlikely to happen within our side of the house because, yes, again, prisons are overcrowded and underfunded. Now, fatal mistakes that the opposition have actually stated is the fact that they are too naive when we already proved the status quo isn't enough, right? The second is that they are only engaging on their base case scenario. Now, moving on to some other rebuttals. Their victim will eventually feel better after seeing them become a better person, right, to the society after serving their prison sentence, other than seeing the criminal committing more crime and harming more victims after their prison sentence. Because deep down, these criminals are still tainted with the same unfortunate mental inability to feel love, guilty, etc. Right? The second is that social media can be impactful. But we said because it's corrupted where it has a higher hierarchy on which more money you have, the more power you have. Even when we're being charitable, in our case, even when there's these criminals that they have money and privilege out of jail before they actually serve their jail time. So this is very likely to happen. At least they have been injected and it's already becoming a better person. And meanwhile, on the opposition side of the house, when there's this event occurs, they can just cheat their jail sentence out and they can still just be a criminal right now. Moving on to clashes, right? The first clash is the weighing on the metric on the impact to the general masses and the victims, right? On our side, our goal is clear here: to create deterrent and protection for the citizen, right? When it comes to the sexual, for example, when it comes to sexual harassment case, chemical castration and jail time will still be administered within our side of the house, but they will be complemented with biomedical enhancement so that they can actually become a better person after the thing, right? But we'd have to bite the bullet here, okay? Even within the world in your side of the house, right? Victims would continue to feel pain even after they go out of jail, right? This is a non-exclusive trait. This is a non-exclusive unfortunate because even on your side of the house, when criminals go out of jail, the victims will continue to actually feel suffering if that's what you're actually trying to portray, right? So this is actually a non-exclusive that exists also in this side of the house, right? The oppositions. Okay. Next, we are actually weighing on the impact to the prisoner, right? Yes.
Isn't at the very least the victim knows that this person has already received the consequences for what he has done towards him?
Yes, but that is also the case within our side of the house. We are actually serving them jail time. We can actually give them actually chemical castration, and we're not also talking about whether we would eliminate capital punishment here. Okay, so these regular criminal and punishment will actually still continue to exist, but this will be complemented by an increase within the rehabilitative aspect within our side of the house, right? Now, weighing on the impact on the prisoner, right? This would actually alleviate stigmas and welcoming the person back to the society, right? When it comes to like a criminal, they will actually be tainted with like these labels within society that they're a killer per se, when they're just like criminals in general, right? We should actually alleviate the stigma because we actually would prove them wrong, right? These criminals will actually become a better person. They would actually have an increase in morality. They would actually have an increase in honesty and compassion. So this would actually alleviate some of the stigma within society to actually welcome them to become a part of the society that is functional and to become a good member of the society, right? Now, this would actually increase their morale and for them to actually learn from them. It's like reducing the likelihood of recidivism that is actually committing the same crime again and again and again, right? Now, I would like to actually touch on of an interesting case. This is a serial killer, an infamous serial killer called Jeffrey Dahmer, right? He had actually underlying mental illness that went under notice because his family did not have access to like these kind of luxury therapists, right? That is something that you actually take granted within the opposition side of the house, right? Now, what the case of Jeffrey Dahmer is that he had under notice mental disturbances, and he actually grew up to become a serial killer, right? Within our side of the house, we're actually aiming to alleviate these kind of things, right? We cannot actually, okay, let's take it for granted. We cannot actually, we did not actually prevent these crimes from happening, but at the very least, we actually get to grow a compassion on him. But if the case is severe, again and again, we have actually stated that we are not going to take away the jail time. We can still administer capital punishment within our side of the house, right? Now, moving on to my counterfactual, how our world would actually look like, right? Within our best case scenario, our world would actually look like, our world aims to reduce recidivism, that is the likelihood of somebody actually committing crime again and again. Like for example, somebody who was murdered, when they go out of jail, if they are actually injected with these moral value enhancement, this would actually reduce the likelihood.
We don't understand. Like you guys say that people will still have jail time, but now people will have hope. For example, how does the two cases are aligned when it's contradicting within like the context?
What? Okay, I'm just gonna assume what you're saying, right? Okay, these people are gonna have jail time, and then once they actually go out of jail time, they will actually be rehabilitated. So we are actually trying to increase the CGS role here. We are actually fulfilling the 4 pillars of CGS. The first is rehabilitation, right? We are actually reducing recidivism by actually trying to improve the morality and trying to improve the honesty and compassion within the victim, within the criminal, right? So this actually would cater to the rehabilitation aspect of the CGS. The second is the deterrence effect, right? As has been presented by my first and the second speaker of the government of the proposition, how this will actually create a deterrent effect. The third is protecting society, right? Society will be safer. Society will be actually put in a much more good condition, because why? These people are less likely to commit crime, right? So this would actually try and pose a more and efficient criminal justice system, so that society is in general better, right? The fourth is punishment. This punishment aspect still actually exists within our side of the house, because we are not actually debating about whether we should actually decrease, whether we should actually abolish capital punishment, etc., etc. Right? Now the worst case scenario. Okay. Now on their world panel, we live in on their world, they would just continue to defend the status quo. They did not actually alleviate how recidivism is still likely to happen within their side of the house, how we can actually get to alleviate the corrupt justice system that we have right now, and that is why we are so proud to propose. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that fine speech. First speaker of the opposition, now for the conclude the case of opposition. I welcome the speaker, James George.
Satu, dua, tiga. When this criminal already done a lot of harm towards the victim, and how the victim, for example, reacting, such as keep believing that this perpetrator is a bad people. For example, they never going to be free. They never going to be free. For example, they are always going to be receive societal judgment and punishment. For example, from the society, they never going to live a beautiful life at the end of the day. Therefore, we say that this is what will give victim closure at the end of the day, and it only achieved on our side when these people, when this perpetrator need to suffer in the already harm, do a lot of harm, suffering in the prison to reflect reflect what they have done at the end of the day. Two major reasons why they should lose this debate. Firstly, we say that they on their side, they only talking about future benefit. For example, it prevent the harm to people in the future. But we say that they never cater towards the victim, who are the most vulnerable here. Okay, they're going to protect people that are going to for example, have for example, going to be harmed in the future. But we say they neglect the victim who already harmed in the first place. For example, they only talking about only talking about the future benefit, but they cater towards the people who already harmed, how they feel, for example. But on our side, we already explained to you how this victim will get closure through knowing the perpetrator is going to a bad place, for example, to the prison at the end of the day, and will receive societal judgment and not going to be live a happy life at the end of the day. Therefore, we say we should win. But then secondly, the first speaker talking about the problem that they brought is that CGS is bad. For example, how the government failed to create a better CGS. But we say that they never explain to you why the problem that they brought, for example, the CGS is bad, will be solved when you apply this biomedical, for example, medical, for example. Therefore, we say that the problem doesn't solve at the end of the day. But we're going to explain to you how on our side, if we keep staying with the status quo, this is what will push the government to for example, to keep make the CGS will be better at the end of the day. 2 point of rebuttal before moving on to our case. To our clash. Firstly, they say that this suffering that is happening towards these people is symmetrical. We say that they say that because this victim, for example, already feel traumas, therefore they are already suffering. But we say that this is different. Suffering from traumas and knowing your perpetrator having living a good life is different. Yes, we say that on our side there is still suffering from traumas, but at least we say on our side we reduce the suffering that this victim feel, because they know that the perpetrator is not living a good life. For example, the perpetrator is being punished in the prison at the end of the day. But then also, secondly, they talking about rehabilitation. The we're talking about rehabilitation is expensive, for example, but we say no, this is not important, because understand that the rehabilitation on our side is state funded, for example. Therefore, we say that this is not important at the end of the day. But before moving on to our class,
Okay, wouldn't the victim feel better if they see their criminal become a better person rather than seeing their criminal committing more crimes after serving their jail prison sentence because they are still corrupted inside?
we say that we already explained to you on our side how when these people suffering in the jail, for example, this is what going to make them less likely to commit the crime again. But we say that the victim actually feels something when this victim needs someone to always be blamed, for example, such as they blame the perpetrator and always see that this perpetrator is a bad people. But now on your side, the society, for example, will going to tell you that you need to forgive them, for example, because now they are a better person. At the end of the day, that I'm going to explain better on our class. But then moving on to my first class about which one creates better CGS at the end of the day. We say that we acknowledge that the benefit exists on their side, that the prisoners will going to be a good person at the end of the day. But then second is, but to respond for this, firstly, we say that this is not catering to the most vulnerable actor, for example, which is already harmed. The victim, for example, this not give victim closure at the end of the day. How? Because let's see how the victim's feeling. We say that when these victims being harmed by the perpetrator, they are picturizing these people who harm them, who give traumas to them, as a criminal, as a bad people, for example, who deserve to be blamed forever. And this is someone who they can keep blame at the end of the day. Therefore, seeing the criminal, for example, become a better person at the end of the day, we say that this not give a victim closure at the end of the day, because you just straight away being a good person, for example, without having to go through a lot of punishment, without having to go through a process where you feel guilty, for example, in the prison, such as they because we say that this victim closure exists on our side, because they know the perpetrator going to the prison, which is a bad place, for example, or how they still going to face societal judgment at the end of the day. But then secondly, even if, for example, the victim interest to want the perpetrator to be a good people at the end of the day, we say this is bad, because this is something that being told by the society, that you should forgive them, for example, because now they are a different person. Therefore, we say that this is not coming from their own self at the end of the day, because you are forced to believe that they are a better human. Therefore, you should not saying that they are a criminal anymore, and should forgive them at the end of the day. But then second clash, then but then let's see what they respond to this. We say that they respond by saying that this CGS, for example, is not good at the end of the day. To respond for this, firstly, we say that the CGS are the progressive, for example. They are the progressive, for example, how there are rehabilitation, or how the government is trying to fix the CGS at the end of the day. Therefore, we say it's going to be bad when you actually shift shift to this biomedical. How? Because exactly because the CGS did not advance yet, we say that we should not shift to this method, because on our side the government will still focus focus, for example, on creating better CGS at the end of the day. Therefore, we say that this is what going to create better CGS on our side at the end of the day. But then second class about why it's justified to do this. They say that it's justified for you to do this because these people born with mental illness, for example, they are born with different conditions. To respond for this, we say no. These people these people, for example, may be born with different, maybe born with something different, but we say that they do not born with the intention to do crime, for example, crime, right? They are still choosing that to do crime at the end of the day. Even if they are born with this, we say this cannot be the reason why it is justified for them to do the crime, and that they should be forgive and live a good life at the end of the day. Or they respond to this by saying like Jeffrey Dahmer at the end of the day, but we say we're so proud to.
Thank you very much for that kind remarks, first speaker of opposition. Now to sum up the case of opposition, we're welcome the first speaker. Here.
Oh, wait, sorry. Retribution or reparation, we still question what is the clear stance of the team proposition at the end of the day. 3 points that I'm going to bring in my reply speech. One, regarding the whole cases of team proposition is just a blurring model to begin with, panels. The first speaker says that they just only keep throwing claims that how will this prisoner come back to the society, and we want to give them their rights back at the end of the day. But then we still question like the model, like when will it is enhanced at the end of the day, and what will change in the prison environment towards the prisoner itself. It is left unexplained from the first speaker. But then the second speaker come and explain that they want to have a model like it is want to be enhanced before the incarceration, and we will still put them towards the we will still put them in the jail time, and this is only for the mental needs. Two responses to this. A, not only that this is coming very late for the second speaker for you to like portray the model at the end of the day, but B, it is also a disconnection of arguments from the team proposition. There is still a missing line of actors in the first speaker's speech. You haven't even explained like what kind of actors or like criminals that you want to protect, but it only comes later in the second speaker. It is still like a missing line on your arguments at the end of the day. It is even worse than when the third speaker come and just say that there is going to be an existence of jail time and rehabilitation. It is clear that this is an inconsistency of case coming from team proposition. We still question then what is the thing that you really want? Is it you want to give them the retribution or like a kind of preparation from like rehabilitation? We still question what is the clear stance toward you and what do you really want to champion at the end of the day to make you like different from our side. At the end of the day, they're only like creating a blurry stance case at the end of the day. But then secondly, regarding the engagements of both sides, they said that they want to repair for certain actors only, which is the mental need one and the one that unintentional crime. Two responses to this. A, we say it is already clear that it is only a very little urgency coming from team proposition. They want to only like cater micro scale of people. There's only like case per case, and it's like it is very many alternate preventive mechanism from like making this mental needs to do like certain crime. There's so many like rationality that happens at the end of the day. Or like B, even if they want to like engage towards the case of like mental needs and you want to debate on that thing, we already engage like the status quo already like exists and provide like rehabilitation, and that is even proven better on our side because we give them a gradual process by creating a structural awareness for this criminal at the end of the day regarding like their crime and etc.
But then secondly, they also explain that they're going to give a hope for the criminal and like in terms of the empathy by in terms of empathy. But then they also come from the like third speaker or like second speaker to say that we're still going to give them jail time. Then we still question what kind of hope are you going to give this prisoner? Like what do you want, like to give them hope and like live happily with their own new behaviors, or like you want to still like punish them in the prison at the end of the day? We still question like what kind of hope, and they still having a shaky stance till the end of this debate. But then okay, let's just engage with them. Even if yes, they want to like give the help towards this prisoner, two responses towards it. Like one, we say it is never in line with the principle of CGS to begin with, panels. Like where is the retribution coming from you then? Or like where is the consequential impact where them should have to receive the proportional punishment that they have done towards like towards the victim at the end of the day. In terms of engagements, not only that their case is only revolving around the same thing, but we've already engaged in every worst case that they want to give at the end of the day. But then thirdly then, why did we want this debate clearly? Three things. We have already given you a very clear and crystallized stance from the beginning of our first speaker. We say we want a retribution where it is the thing and the only thing that is being deserved, to be received by this criminal to begin with. They have done so many harms, like traumatizing their victims or like threatening the society and etc. Meaning we want to give them like the consequence for like violent back and etc. And B, we have already like engaged on their very worst case that is to begin with very unlikely regarding the CGS corruption and etc. We already like explained that it is very unlikely because not only it is very worst case, but even if it is really happens, there are like so many alternatives like societal judgment or like societal intervention from like court process that also can be objective because of the majority interest, and it can also affect and influence the like judge decision or like sentence at the end of the day, meaning we already like engage towards the worst case and we still defend it at the end of the day. And thirdly, we have a very clear consistency in our case where we only want the victim to be like gain their closure and have the retribution towards the prisoner at the end of the day. If you want to make a better CGS, vote for team opposition. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that fine speech, the vice speaker. Now to end today's debate and to also sum up the case of proposition, I welcome the vice speaker.
Start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Lottery of birth is something that is something unfortunate that people are born with, causing the inability to feel and a lack of humanity. This is what pushes them to become criminals in the first place. This is the urgency in this motion. Now then, before moving on to my clarification as to why our model is the right one. Firstly, because most criminals are born with some sort of genetic or mental illness, right? Illnesses that makes them more likely to commit crimes because they turn to non-conventional ways to feel things like joy and take away their feeling of numbness, right? Side opposition's model is that crimes are made by choice because people can just do critical thinking, and if they do crimes, it is because of their own decision making. Note that the flaw in this model is that not everyone can function as a normal individual. Not everyone has the capability to undergo critical thinking. Some of us are born with genetic disposition. Some of us have mental illnesses that prevents our ability to do this, right? Secondly then, know that our model has been clear since the first speaker, and we have never said that we'll just give criminals no jail time at all. We never said that, oh, criminals under ourselves will just get this injection and we'll release them from prison with no jail time, right? Now then, onto my first clash on deterrence. What have they told you? They've told you two things. Firstly, prisons will provide psychologists and psychiatrists on their side to make criminals aware of why their actions are wrong. And secondly, criminals on our side of the house won't feel guilt or remorse. Several responses to this. Firstly, we have already printed out that the prison system in the status quo doesn't work because of things such as, for example, a lack of funding, which leads to no education, right? And a lack of books given to these criminals. And this also explains why it is really unlikely they'll be able to provide psychologists in the first place. And also, we have already told you that the prison system and the status quo label prisoners as criminals, right? They give them numbers and they call them by these numbers. You literally take away their names, you dehumanize them. And this is why there will be hope under our side. Because under our side of the house, we let these criminals feel things and we let them believe that, oh, they can be normal functioning members of society, whilst under their side of the house, they just dehumanize them and call them by these numbers. And thirdly, because of overcrowding, right? Secondly then, the reason, we have already told you that the reason criminals do crime is because those people like psychopaths want to feel something, or because some of these criminals lack the ability to see how damaging their actions are to victims because they lack the ability to feel things such as empathy, right? This is the problem problem due to the body's inability to produce things such as chemicals and hormones. So side opposition solution is already a problem solution mismatch, as you cannot just teach someone how to feel, right? Now then, onto my second clash on punishment. They have told you that firstly, criminals will feel punished due to incarceration, and because these criminals will suffer, because under their side, criminals will suffer, right? We have already pointed out that under their side, this won't happen, because under their side, when the criminals lack the ability to feel things like empathy, they aren't able to feel guilt. And because they aren't able to feel guilt, they don't actually see how damaging their action is. They don't actually see why this is wrong. And as such, they won't feel guilt, they won't actually suffer, right? And furthermore, know that under their side, it is actually and note that we have already pointed out that like this status quo doesn't work because we already see things such as, for example, criminals who become second-time offenders even though they already undergo the whole justice system in the status quo. This is the reason why you cannot buy their case, right? Now then, onto my actor analysis. There are two actors in this debate. Firstly, the criminals and the victims, right? I'll explain as to why our side caters to both. Firstly, on the criminals, we have already told you that we benefit them by, firstly, we deter them from future crimes. Secondly, we make them feel like they're normal and can be functional members of society. And thirdly, we already fix their genetic problem, right? While on side opposition, they just put these criminals in overcrowded prisons that cannot provide therapists or educational books to do their lack of funding in the current status quo. Now then, onto the second actor, the victims. On side opposition, they say that victims will benefit because they see this criminal suffer. We have already told you several times as to why this won't happen, because criminals won't feel guilt. While under our side, we fix this problem. We allow criminals to feel guilt. We allow them to reflect on their actions, and this is why they're more likely to suffer. And furthermore, we've already told you that due to deterrence, we actually protect future people from becoming victims, right? And because of all of these reasons, and vote for side proposition.
Alright, thank you very much for that kind remarks, Vice Speaker. That's the end of the debate. Congratulations for finishing Octofinals. We'll see you in the fall. Good debate.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for debate.